So it's been a while, and we haven't had a tech tip in a long time, really. Like that was almost a weekly thing there for a while, and we thought maybe we
was
would
it
get
a
back
weekly
to
thing?
some of that.
I don't think it was a weekly thing.
It was at least a monthly thing. Like we were trying to do that every once in a while.
It's one of them ideas that we started and we just never followed through.
Well, it's one of those things when you come out of the gate real hard. By the time you round turn number 4, sometimes it's like you get a little winded, and there's a bunch of episodes.
That's the biggest problem with people starting new things. I'm like, dude, the hard part is the follow through. It's easy to come up with this grand idea. The follow through is the part that's like, dude, that's where
I got the title ideas guy. My wife has called me the ideas guy for years.
Yeah, you just don't follow through.
Yeah, it's just the follow through, getting it done. Because those, I think, we did get a lot of feedback on them. So we wanted to come back today and kind of do another tech tip.
Bullshit, Jason. We just needed to come up with a topic. We're just don't bullshit to everybody.
Buddy was in the office today.
I was like, we got to get a podcast together, and so we were like, you know what, an easy one for us to do is talk about some tech tips.
Well, what are we going to be talking about then, Mr. Take This Over?
But you want to make it sound I set you
I'm
up
making
for that.
you sound good. That's why you write my paycheck, man.
I set you up, man. I'm like, Jason, why don't you start this? And then I come in and I stick my thumb right on top of it.
Right.
And they're like, no, bullshit. And I call you
We're
out.
not doing it like this.
Lord, I apologize. All right.
Let's talk about some gear.
Yeah. We're going to talk about. So you did a good job. You come up with a list of a few topics that we want to talk about.
Oh, now he's going to. Everybody notice what's happening. Now he's going to compliment me. That's called love bombing, buddy. Have you ever heard of that phrase?
What's it called?
Love bombing, I think. I don't know. Bombing? Ask somebody in your shop. They know all about it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Jason.
Anyway, I did a really good thing, and I put a list together.
Yes. So I think it was good. We talked. One of the topics I said that I wanted on there was interference. I wanted to touch base on that because I've seen a couple questions. We've got a couple questions specifically talking about what are they called on the 300? The channel scan?
The channel scan view.
Do you have a 300 with you?
It's in the truck. We went out exercising last night.
Mine's in my truck too.
That's a good place.
I was thinking, I don't need to go get it. Jason's will have his at his desk.
Yeah, right.
Anyways, so channel scan is what I want to just touch base on to kind of explain what channel scan is, because I've seen some people that don't quite understand what it is. And so I thought that would be a good one to touch base. And we might even hit pause here so I can go grab one and make sure that I'm not bullshitting too much whenever I talk about it. Interference. I wanted to also touch about on telemetry callers, backup systems, because I don't know if I fully did, but I started to I think offend people on Facebook via post. I mean, I know I have offended people before.
But this particular one,
when you narrow it down to this particular topic, I was not planning on. I was like, oh no, I can just. I don't know what it is when I give my input, man. Somebody comes out from somewhere and is like, and I'm like, that's not how I was meaning that. So I wanted to touch base on just the idea of telemetry callers and what my experience has been with some of them as far as customers having problems. I'm in no way saying don't use telemetry callers. Or am I in no way saying use telemetry callers? I just want to explain the situation and let users decide, so that if they do decide to use a telemetry collar next to a Garmin, some of the things you look for, right? And so that was one of the topics that it's just a deep topic that it's hard, man, on social media.
It's so, there's no context and it's just short. That's why I think the podcasts are really good, because we can get into a discussion about it. Because I get that call, especially now. I mean, as soon as Wisconsin, Michigan, all those guys start kicking off bear hunting, it's like I got all this interference, and then you get into it. Like now, one of my first questions is, "Are you running telemetry collars?"
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I am. Well, okay. Let's turn them off, and then let's start troubleshooting. But
bark detection. I know there was some on these TT25s, and again, I don't want to offend anybody, but bark detection is not my favorite feature. But I wanted to just touch base on bark detection. We're still waiting for a software update from Garmin. I checked today, and it wasn't out yet, so I'm really surprised. By the time this podcast comes out, it might be, but who knows? You got on here limited range, so I'll let you take that topic. So I don't know what you mean by that.
I've been seeing or getting some phone calls with limited range, and I think most of them, the majority, has been revolved around the telemetry situation. And like you and I were talking the other day, it's the common question is, well, what frequency of telemetry won't limit my service or interfere with my collars? Because when we have an interference, that's what's limiting the range on most of these. And I think the big thing is just it's this huge unfiltered signal, and people need to understand like how that can affect how the Garmin receives its information. I mean, your bullhorn analogy is what always comes to my mind.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. So I don't. I may disagree on that a little bit, but I don't know. I'm not. I want more data to make those assumptions.
Sure.
So if those were words out of my face, my mouth on Facebook, I'd be offending people like yesterday or whatever. So I'm just saying, I don't know that I buy that. I mean, I do think there's some factors there that happen, but we can talk about that. If you're that's why it's a good thing. If you're talking about, that revolves into the telemetry question, we can bundle that to telemetry.
Yeah.
I think range should be a whole separate topic, just between me and you. I think that would be something that I don't know that we have the support. We should hold that one to talk about limited range. That can be its own topic. And then you want to touch about outdoor plus mapping, which would be a short touch base on. And then you got here the GPS replacement straps are available. I think you're referring to the flex bands, the zero flex band, and for the TT25s. And then you got on here the new antenna keepers, which I'm kind of working on and prototyping out right now. So awesome. Well, let's wrap it back up to the first topic, I think, which I just want to talk about interference. So regarding the Garmin, the 320, the dynamic update rate, those are some of the key features about interference that I think
320.
Sorry, 320.
The 300. You did.
300.
Alpha 300.
200, whatever it took.
I had to second guess. I'm like, what? It's been a while since 320.
This is why you're here, is to make sure I say shit right. Regarding the 300, right, in the TT25s, I think the goal was to kind of try to reduce interference. And I think there's some tools that they did that probably help that. I don't want to be too salesmanish, salesman, whatever the word. Can you make that a word where you're
salesy?
Yeah, snake oil salesman.
Right.
To be like, oh my gosh, the interference is so much better, blah, 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 blah. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I don't think you're going to sit in there and go into a situation where there's 100 callers or 200 callers out in a pen where, they're all really tight quarters or a field trial or whatever. You got hundreds of callers on right there. I don't think you just go buy a TT25 and a 300 and you walk in there and be like, my shit don't stink.
No different.
Yeah, I think interference is a much grander problem than just saying this will fix it.
There's levels to it.
What's that?
Kind of like levels. I mean, as far as interference, like there are environmental issues. There are, like when you're talking about all those callers clicking off, even if you have a different ID code that's not conflicting, you could still see range or interference issues, right?
Yeah, there's still signals in the air that that those, and the other thing I want to talk about was I want to touch on LED lights for interference. So circle back on that while I'm thinking about it. But it's like the best way to describe it is if you're trying to tell me something in a concert, if we're sitting at a concert and there's, for the purpose of the explanation, there's 1,000 people and they're just screaming, blah, 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 and the band's playing, and and me and you are 20 feet away, 30 feet away, right? You could probably scream and yell at me and go, buddy, I need you to go turn off the stove, or whatever message you want to send me, right? And I'm going to be like, what? I need you to go turn off the whatever it is you're trying to tell me, right? And I'll be like, you want me to start my truck? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So
it's a mem waiting to happen.
Exactly. So, and that's a good way of explaining some of the problems we have. And that's a real gross explanation to say, okay, this is not, we don't have 1,000 callers inside a stadium with the band playing, right? We don't have that much interference, but we could have 150 callers all shouting at the same time or close to the same time in a short,
within a 2-second
quarter of a second time period, tenth of a second, quarter of a second. That's the kind of the time period that all these callers are talking on. And they could all be shouting different things in the airwaves at the same time. And you're expecting one from your caller to make it through that mess of airwaves to get to your handheld. And you're expecting the handheld to receive, read, and fully understand and comprehend a string of digits that tells it where it's at. It tells it what the battery life is. It tells it what mode it's in. It tells it, is the dog barking? It's supposed to. I mean, we'll talk about that later. Is the dog
open
treed?
that can of worms later.
Is it pointing? Is it barking? Is it moving? What direction is it moving? All these different pieces of data that come through every single 2.5 seconds, 5 seconds, 10, whatever your update rate is. It's basically giving a short burst of data. And so that's the problem, right? Is the problem isn't, oh, this one caller is on and this one handheld is on, and I can send this data successfully 2 miles with nothing else on. You know what I mean? Like that. Right. That's a perfect case situation. We're expecting that same performance in the concert. You know what I mean? So, however far, for the sake of yelling, out in the middle of the woods when it's super dead quiet, you're down at the truck and you're field dressing an elk and it's super quiet and you're at the truck and I can yell at you, hey, I forgot my knife. Bring my knife. And you're going to be like, okay, I'll bring your knife down to you, 300 yards.
From 500 yards.
Yeah. I can send a message sometimes in quiet environments a long ways. Ain't no way in hell I'm going to tell you in a concert at 30 yards.
Get my knife. Yeah, that's how you start a riot.
It's a bad example. Bring the gun.
It got better as you went on. It wasn't. Anyway, so we're bringing you the knife or turning the stove off.
The gun. Bring the gun. Yeah. In a concert, but probably a bad idea. But probably a bad example. But
bad idea, yeah.
I always find gotta offend somebody.
It just falls into place. That's the best part. It's
all
natural.
Hot in here? These examples I'm giving, I'm like, man.
See, that's what you get for picking on me in the beginning.
So, 2 situations. Interference is a lot of times a result of environment, meaning what environment is the callers in. Okay, and so. What does this matter? So we circle back to the 300 and the TT25, right? So when we say we feel like these are going to get better, there's 2 things that come to mind. One is this channel scan, okay? Now this channel scan does not fix the situation. It doesn't change anything about the system. But what it does is it scans the airwaves and it listens to things that the human cannot listen to, right? Basically, this 320 has the ability to act like a scanner and say, I'm scanning all the airwaves that I care about, and I'm mapping out. I'm receiving 4 devices on this channel. I'm receiving 2 devices on this channel. Oh, I got 7 devices on this channel. I'm getting some interference detection over here, and it kind of tells you out of the 5 channels it uses and the 20 time slots, it maps out what it's hearing out there on the airwaves. You can't. So when me and you are doing this right now, there's signals out in the air that we don't know, we can't hear. Right. And so that's what the channel scan is. It doesn't say, oh, I'm going to scan and find the one and move your caller to it. It doesn't do that. It scans it and then shows you a little thing to show it red if it's being used, if that channel or location or whatever is being used, and it shows it green, I believe, if it's not being used. And so that allows you, so if I'm in a situation where I'm getting a ton of interference and I can't get my callers to work, I can go hit that channel scan. I can let it sit there for a minute. It's going to take a few minutes.
Oh, yeah, it takes a little bit.
Because some callers are set to 10-second updates. Some callers are set to 2.5-second updates. So you at least got to wait for those callers to hit the signal. So if you just let it sit there for 30 seconds or whatever, and it's kind of sampling what's in the airwaves and what's happening, and then you can go, man, I see a lot of users on channel 1, but nobody's on channel 2. I'm going to switch that dog to channel 2.
Yeah.
Right. Or channel 3 or 2-1 or 2, you know what I mean? Like it lets you bog down to be like, there may be a lot of people on 2-1, 2-3, 2-4, but nobody's using 2-11 and 2-12 and 2-13. So you're like, hey, that's a channel that I could switch my dogs to and potentially lower the interference.
Right.
The time period when my callers are sending out signals, there's not a bunch of other callers shouting at the same time. Right. So does that kind of make sense, Jason? I mean, I know
I've messed with it a bit. I mean, layman's terms, I'll tell you how I first tried it out, because I forgot about it in my first couple hunts, really. Mm-hmm. But I got into a situation where I was hunting in an area that I usually hunt, and I usually have good range, and all of a sudden, like, I noticed I was getting a question mark, which was odd. And then I started getting some detection of interference notices. So I'm like, oh, I wonder, there must be somebody up here. So I hit the channel view scan. And yeah, I mean, I could look and see, like, within my immediate area, there was definitely another hunter that was running several dogs, and I was able to pick it up, and I just changed that dog's ID, like you're saying. Just because I knew it would be a reoccurring thing too, but like, it's kind of like if you're programming callers in and it says, hey, this interferes with so-and-so. This is the tool that tells you this is what you're interfering with. We don't know that dog. We don't know that hunter. We don't have any of their information as far as the big one is people need to understand you don't get tracking locations. You don't get ID codes. You don't get any of that caller information. It's just the time slot on which and frequency that it sits on.
It's basically, and that's a good point. So that was one of the questions I seen in our help group on Facebook was, are you able to track other dogs with that? And the answer is no. You can't track another dog with channel scan. But what you can tell is that there's another dog caller out there. You know what I mean? Basically, it'd be like a room if you closed your eyes, right? And let's say there was 10 people talking in this room, right? So you can't see who, you can't see where, but if you close your eyes and you just listen with your ears for 10 seconds or 20 seconds and you go, man, okay, I can hear somebody over there talking. I don't know who that is. I've never heard that voice before, but I can hear that there's somebody over there talking. I can hear this person talking. I can hear this. And you can say, I think there's 10 people in this room. Sure. Just by listening to the different voices and different pitches and different things and go, okay. And so you write down, you say, there's 10 people in this room. And then you can go to another room and go,
right.
Oh, there's not very many people in this room. I don't hear anybody in this room. This is the room that I want my dogs
I want to be
in.
here.
Yeah, this is where I want to be. So those are just some different analogies on how it is. I can't tell you with channel scan, I'm not going to see your dogs. I'm not going to be able to go pick your dogs up or help you track them or anything. You got to give me the code for me to be able to track your dogs. I mean, I'm not going to just take my 300 and go, man, Jason, where you at? Go,
yeah, stink.
If you don't give me the share code, I can't track your dogs. And that's pretty important. So
the only thing I would say is it's kind of like, we've talked about tracking dogs without antennas on your Garmin, running off communication. I like it now because I can use that as a judge of what's in the area, even though I don't have those locations or know those dogs. Like, I know that there's a group of guys that hunt my area. And if I hit that channel view scan and I pick someone up, that may change where I go because I know there's a set group of guys up in here. Well, you hit that channel view scan and you've got nothing popping up. You got the woods to yourself. I mean, which is kind of a nice feeling. You don't have to be on this high alert.
Yeah. So one of the things, so you could use it like that. One of the other things I want to be clear on is the MURS radio band, MURS, is called Multi-Use Radio Service, I think is the name for it. It's 5 channels, 2-watt limitations. You can get little walkie-talkies to talk on it. There's some businesses that have it. There's just some other products and things that use that radio frequency. So, and people, hunters are using these VHF radios that are talking. And so there is also, I should mention that I don't believe, and I haven't tested this, but I just knowing the radio side of things and stuff like that, the Garmin's not going to be able to distinguish, Garmin callers only. Meaning if there's some kid with a MURS band walkie-talkie, right? And so,
in the frequency range,
or there's some guy yapping on a truck radio in this frequency band, right? The same frequency. I believe that that's going to show up in your interference. So if there's guys that are actively using these frequencies, 150 something ... on their truck radios, and they're talking while they're hunting, they could be essentially jamming it, a bunch of callers, right? And they may not know it, but that is another possibility for interference, right? Mm-hmm. Interference is a token of environment. Environment causes the interference. It's not your caller in your handheld. It's the things that you can't control. So sometimes interference is you trying to figure out where you can go to get away from interference. Like, you can't just always fix it with your system. You got to avoid interference. And the more callers that get out there, the more problems it is to get interference. And the second thing is the more guys that are talking on radios in the 152, 153, 154 megahertz range, not technically legal, but if there are guys out there that are doing that, they can be causing interference on these callers, right? And so all these factors come into play. It's not as simple as just like, this isn't just as simple as Garmin being able to just fix this. So we're getting tools to try to help us, but people got to learn how to use those tools. So,
and that's something I would recommend. Like, if people that are calling in for tech support, especially on interference or range, not picking up a caller, I shouldn't say range issues. It's not always something big like a radio either. I don't know if I still have it, but I had a cell phone charger that a buddy of mine kept having problems with his alpha dropping signal.
Yeah.
And every time you would plug something in, that little blue LED light would kick on, and it kicked off just the right RF frequency that if you were in that truck or within 10 feet of that charger, Alpha 200 drop everything. No GPS, nothing. You get away from it, boom, picks it right back up. So we really want to make sure that we're limiting that environment, that outside stuff. Any other stuff like radios or...
That's a huge point that I wanted, and that's why I said LED. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's going to lead us into...
Well, this ties in.
Is that called a segment? What do you call that?
A segue.
I don't know. Segue. We're going to segment, segue, whatever.
We're going to
seg something. We're going to seg whatever it takes. So LEDs is a big factor in VHF radio frequency. So the MERS band frequency, the Garmin frequency, when we say VHF, a lot of people just think of the truck radios, right? VHF means very high frequency. That's a band. So it's like I'd have to look it up. But it's like there's a space here so that you have low frequency, HF high frequency, VHF, which is very high frequency, and then UHF, which is ultra high frequency. And it probably goes even more like gigahertz and whatever. But for the sake of our customers, VHF is what we talk about. Our truck radios are VHF for the most part, and our Garmin's are VHF for the most part. Right. So when we say VHF, the white VHF radios that you buy for your boat in the sporting goods store. Specials. What's that?
The Uniden special.
Yeah. So you go down and you buy a radio for your boat where you can talk to the Coast Guard or whatever. That's a VHF radio that talks in these 150 something frequencies. A lot of the business band radios that you buy, ham radios, 2-meter ham radios, which a ton of guys are using a ham radio. All these radios operate in the VHF frequency band. So there's ham radio might be at 148 megahertz. The boat radios talking to the Coast Guard might be on 156 or something. You know what I mean? Garmin's operating on 152, 153. You know what I mean? So they're all in these different radio wavelengths, and they're all in this VHF band. So you know what I mean? So it's kind of like there's just a ton of different segments a part of this radio band. When they say when somebody says VHF radio, it's not just talking about the boat radio. It's talking about a radio that covers a segment of frequencies. So anyways, getting back to your LED question. LED lights are known to cause interference with VHF radios, right? So a cheap LED light, that little LED light on that little blue light you're talking about on your dash, right? To be able to run that, you got to have what's called a ballast, and so that light's turning on and off a lot, thousands of times a second, right? So essentially, when it turns on and off, on and off, on and off, that's a radio signal, okay? It's just a different frequency. So that LED is basically emitting a radio signal, which for the most part, the light is, I don't even know what the frequency, it's not VHF. I can tell you that it's like ultra high frequency. You know what I mean? So light is like huge, just a really, really fast frequency. Mm-hmm. So, in terms of a radio signal, it's slow compared to light, but light's the same thing. It's basically a radio signal that we can see, or we can't see it, but it lights up, whatever. Anyways, we're going to geek out too much. Whole nother podcast. Let's not confuse people. I'm already confusing myself.
But it's all frequency. Even preset radio buttons, I've seen mess with things. Yeah. So I think people need to understand.
So those LED lights, the cheap ones, have a cheap ballast, and they emit noise, radio noise, when they're making that light go on, right?
Like and staticky.
So you could see a LED light in your truck, inside your truck, from some charger or whatever, and that could cause enough noise in your truck to block the signal. Okay? Now, the bigger question, and one of the more common issues that people will run into, is these LED light bars that people are starting to put on their trucks. Everybody's got these LED lights. Trucks are coming from the manufacturer with LED lights. Like, all of these factors we're running there is studies that are known to cause, like, it's not just Garmin. Okay, this is the Coast Guard. When I was doing some research on this, the Coast Guard has a bulletin about LED lights interfering with radio transmission. So basically, you can Google this and you can say LED interference VHF communications, and you're going to find document after document from the government talking about how people are installing these cheap LED lights on their boats, okay, out in the ocean. It has nothing to do with dogs, nothing to do with tracking dogs.
Sure.
But they're installing these lights on their boats, and they cannot receive and send signals to the Coast Guard or other boats because those lights are jamming their signal. So now that's on a vessel, multi-million-dollar vessels, that they're saying, hey, by the way, don't use cheap lights.
Don't cheap out on your lights.
Do you think the hound guy that's going down to Walmart and buying their LED light is looking at, I got to buy a good light because it might stop my dog tracking? Like, I didn't know. I'm not judging. When I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not judging. Like I'd have been there mounting that light right by my wife. The first LED light my wife bought me, I got for Christmas or something, and it was like $600. Like it was a nice light, right? And I remember, and I had no clue on this. Like it was just pure luck that she bought. They seen her coming a mile away, man. That salesman got her hook, line, and sinker because she was buying. I want to get one for my husband, and they were like, "Oh, we got you.
Oh, he needs this. Let me start the list."
I about choked when she's like, "It's a nice one." They goes this, and this, and I'm like, "What the hell? $600 for this? Jeez,
I need on and off and bright."
Right. So I was like, the hell you spent that much? I wasn't this much of a jerk, but in my head, I was like, the hell you spent $600 for a light? Like, come on, I can go to Walmart and get one for $120. Anyways, fast forward, I'm kind of glad. I don't use that light a lot when I'm hunting, but those decisions are actually very critical to somebody who's using a light while you're hunting your dog. So I'm not going to I can't tell you which ones interfere and which ones don't, but it appears that most of the time the cheaper lights are the ones that they're using inferior parts, and those ballasts are causing interference. And that's just what I've done some reading on the Coast Guard's bulletins and the VHF bulletins and all the different messaging. Has nothing to do with dogs. They're talking about trying to fix it for Mayday shit. You want to be like, Mayday, my shit's going down.
Right.
Like,
I need you.
We can't hear you. Can you turn your light off? I'm sinking. Turn the light off.
Turn off your light bar.
So anyway, so it's just one of them parallels that hound guys need to understand, that sometimes we're just a small fish in the big pond. Like, this is not just dog tracking issues. Interference is a real mechanism of environment. And there's some boat out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean right now.
Bottom.
At the bottom, they use a cheap LED light.
He had his lights on. Sorry, that's not funny. Lord, I apologize.
Lord, I apologize. Yeah. But it's just a really good sometimes aha moment that it's like, you know what? Like, we can be in our little bubble sometimes and go, man, Garmin. Dude, interference in VHF radio, there are rules that we've got to play with. And so some of these things people can make better. And I've heard a lot of people talk about these lights causing, as soon as they turn their light on, bam, dogs, they can't track anything. And so that's my first one. These are just things you need to think about when you can't track and you can't track distance. You've got to look at your environment and go, what am I doing here? Did I just put these brand new lights on to look for cat tracks and they're mounted on my fender? And you don't notice it because your dogs are with you. But man, if you leave those lights on when they start tracking and get distance, you might be able to track a short distance with them, but you can't track the couple mile distance, you know what I mean? Or things like that. So anyway, so LED lights, can be a huge issue for tracking. And I don't know the answer. I can't say go buy, I don't even know the light manufacturers, if it's rigid or, I don't know which ones are good.
Right.
I don't know that a $500 or a $100, I don't know what the price structure that you have to do is. I would say buy them from a place that you could send them back. You know what I mean?
Right.
I hate saying
and
Amazon,
be
but Amazon's got a good
it.
return policy.
No kidding.
Maybe we should do some research and we could sell them, but I don't want to get into the light issue. But those are just things that guys need to think about. You know what I mean? Like the LED light bar, the LED lights on your truck. Try to play with those and see if you're getting any interference out of those. Most of the time, the truck LED lights, you know, the ones that are coming from Ford or Chevy or whoever, Toyota, if you have LED lights on, most of the time they use a pretty clean ballast, right? So most of they're not using the cheap LED ballast for the most part. So I think a lot of times if you're using factory LED lights, I don't think you're gonna. Nothing's guaranteed in life, but I don't think you're gonna see the issues on those. I think it's for the most part we're gonna be looking at those cheaper LED lights that are, you know, bars and stuff.
Right.
So I think I drummed up enough around that LED light. I know.
Yeah. So telemetry collars.
Did you realize that LED lights were doing that much?
Well, so obviously I realized it because of the LED and the charger. I was able to figure that out, you know, with him troubleshooting on the phone. We narrowed it down and he sent it to me because I'm like, dude, I want to see it kind of.
Yeah.
And, you know, it plugged in. It was fine. It was just when the light came on. So I just narrowed it down to that. But I didn't realize the deeper, you know, issue here.
Yeah.
I thought it was
that was a good topic. Like I said, I forgot about that. I'm glad we swung that in. I've been wanting to talk about LEDs for a while.
For a long time.
I had a customer I was talking to him on the phone, and he's like, man, this would be a good podcast. Sorry to take his podcast away, but we just covered it just now. So LED lights, man, don't take a step and do some thinking if you're installing LED lights on your truck. Just be prepared that that's a step. That's a process. So if I put an LED light on my hunting truck, I'm just not going to willy-nilly throw it up there. I'm going to really pay attention how I put it up there, where I put it up there, and I'm going to try and test it and see if it affects my tracking. And I recommend everybody do that.
Tech tips from Buddy.
Even to the little LED in the dash, you know what I mean? Like I said, those are just things that, you know, it can be a small problem or a big problem. So that wraps up the environment for the trucks. Nothing's a foolproof. I mean, I wish there was a silver bullet for this stuff. This is the hardest part. If somebody's like, oh, I'm not tracking such and such. And I'm like, man, there's so many things.
Many variables. That's the hardest part is the variables. And get away from your truck. Like, I hate to say it, but sometimes you know, I got to tell guys, like, are you in the vehicle? Yeah, well, let's take a walk. Like, let's walk 20 feet away from your truck. I want you shutting off everything that you can, you know, to isolate it. Is this a product issue or is this an environment issue? And there's both. It's just that's the hard part on our end is deciphering and, you know, guys being willing to go through the troubleshooting steps, which, you know, if you've got the time and you're willing to go through some troubleshooting, there's a lot that we can accomplish. So
power lines. Is there power lines around? Do you know what I mean? Are you
air flight paths?
Exactly.
I hunt under an airport, and I'll tell you, when that dog goes, you know, 6 miles in a straight line at 1 billion miles an hour, it's not the dog. It's pretty obvious what's going on. But I do that several times a year. I'll pick up a plane.
Yeah. So environment. So interference, tracking distance, those types of things are heavily influenced by environment. So you have to pull your head back and step back out of the situation and go, what are the things that I cannot see? Okay, because you're not going to see the interference, right? What are the things that could be making airwaves ruffled that I can't get a signal through, right? And LED lights are a big one. The other one that I want to talk about is telemetry collars. That's what we had on the list there. And so telemetry collars can be another factor that can cause interference. Two ways. There's two ways that these signals are having. So these collars have two signals that are going out. One is the VHF signal that talks to your handheld. That's how you get the communication for the collar, right?
Right.
But the second, let me take a drink of water here. The second airwave that this caller has to do, handheld and caller, is they've got to talk to the satellites, right? So we've already pretty much hammered the VHF side of the caller, which is the signal that the caller sends directly to the handheld, and the handheld sends directly to the caller, whether it's training or location or barks or treat alerts or whatever it is. That communication happens over
anything
VHF.
You're seeing on a handheld is coming via VHF.
It comes through the VHF. So the one step the caller can tell you the barks. It can almost tell you battery life. It can tell you what setting it is, what software. There's a bunch of things the caller can tell you, right? Mm-hmm. But in order for it to tell you where it is, the GPS location, okay, it needs to acquire its location first. And it does that by satellite signals. And so when a caller or handheld or when these devices get linked up, they're trying to talk to signal frequency. I'm going to Google something here for a minute because I want to. So when these callers are trying to link up, they're sending out little signals to the satellite, right? And they're getting signals back from the satellite. And I don't know if I've covered this before. I know I've covered it in some.
We touched on it, but like the process of it is pretty involved.
Yeah, the way these callers and these GPS devices can calculate their position on Earth is they use like what's called an atomic clock, basically, right? And so, because what happens is when the signal's sent, that time is frozen. So if that satellite sends a really highly accurate time and it says it is 10:40 and 0.0004672 seconds, like that precise of a time, okay, that signal travels through the air from the satellite, right? And it's traveling through the air and the caller gets it. So the caller gets it and goes, it's 10, I forgot what I even said, but 1040.0000236 seconds, okay? It says, no, it's not 0.23 seconds. It's actually 0.33 seconds. It took, so this caller can say, yeah, it says it took 0.0032 seconds for this signal between the time the satellite sent the signal to the time this caller received the signal. It knows the precise amount of time that it traveled through the air. Okay? And this is where you geek out with, why does math matter or whatever? Well, we know that signal travels at the speed of light. Okay? Right. So now we know the time it took, and we know we've got propane getting delivered today. So how much?
You say, you doing new construction?
Yeah, it's like perfect timing.
But Buddy's remodeling.
We don't got Jason's kids screaming in the background.
Yeah,
but
I got rid of mine. My Scream factories are out here.
He's probably out there blazing AC/DC as he's like charging my tank. I'm like, oh, thank you.
That's good.
So back to class, son.
Sorry.
So we know the precise amount of time that signal traveled through the air. And because we know the speed that the signal travels, we can calculate the distance that caller is from that satellite. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now you do that with 3 satellites or 4 satellites. Now we can triangulate. There's only one space in Earth that this distance from this satellite, this distance from that satellite, and this distance from that satellite can happen, right? I'm going to have to help this propane guy. He's just made a circle. He's leaving. I'm like, he can't. There's a big freaking propane tank next to my house. He can't find it. I'm like, it's white.
Please pause.
Oh, we're gonna have to pause here in a minute. I'll go get the alpha.
We can do that.
No, we're good. Well,
but that's why these are different.
Tank, you can find it,
and people need to understand like that. This is why we get 1,000 of these phone calls. Well, I don't have GPS, but I can still tone the dog. I can shock the dog. I can turn the lights on. Well, yes, because that's VHF frequency. And they're two independent sides of this collar that are giving you a group set of information, but it's having to compile all that. It's calculating distances. There's a lot, like an unfathomable amount for me going on in that split second time frame.
Right.
You know, the fact that these things are as reliable as they are is pretty crazy. You know, there's a lot happening.
Yes. And so that's happening on the collar. It's happening on the handheld. Every GPS device has to do that and talk to at least 3 or 4 satellites at the same time. Because 3 of them, it can start to determine your location. With 4 of them, it can tell you the elevation. So like if you're 30 feet off the ground or on a mountain, or, you know what I mean, like different places, you know, your elevation. So with 3, you can say, okay, you're in this spot. But I can't tell how high in the ground you are. I can't tell if you're an airplane at 20,000 feet, or I can't tell you if you're, you know, this with 3 positions. Study. I can only tell you you're in this sphere. And with 4, we can start to dial down elevation. So I can be like, oh no, you're in a plane. You're 800 feet off the ground on a mountain or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so anyways, long story short, the more signals that can calculate, the better off you are for getting accurate information. Now, those signals, they are on a frequency of like 1,500, I think 1,200, 1,500. And don't quote me. I'm Google, Wikipedia, this shit. So if you want to really geek out on it, go do the homework. Like I'm not trying to be like expert, blah, blah, blah. I'm just telling you, this is my understanding and common knowledge of it. But those frequencies are in the gigahertz range, which is over 1,000 megahertz. So our callers are talking at 150 megahertz. I just found a chart. Very high frequency is 30 megahertz to 300 megahertz. Ultra high UHF. So there's a lot of police at radios, those types of things that talk on 800 megahertz, you know, different channels like that. Those are called UHF frequency, and they go from 300 to 3,000 megahertz, which is 3 gigahertz. 3,000 megahertz is the same as 3 gigahertz. So the and then anything over 3 is super high frequency, and then you got extremely high, and then terahertz and whatever. So we're in that we're in the very high frequency VHF, and then UHF. So these callers work in those 2 frequency scales. UHF, which is what the callers use for satellite communications. There are things out there that can affect those signals as well, right? And so anyways, those are the 2 radio frequencies in the airwaves that need to be fairly clear for these callers to do what they need to do without interference. So now we're going to talk about what we're going to talk about is telemetry callers, right? So telemetry callers, and a lot of times they're 217 megahertz, right? 217, 218, 219. In layman's terms, those are a way different frequency, right? There's no reason those should affect your callers, okay? So when you're looking at the book and you're going, dude, it's 217, 218, 219. My callers use 154, and they're using 1.5 gigahertz. Why do I care about a 217 color, a 218 color, or 219 color, right?
Right. Where's the connection here?
Yeah. So number 1 is just another guy in the room. You know what I mean? I'm going to use the analogy that if you got a kid shouting, he's got a different voice. Then you got an adult shouting, he's got a deeper voice. You got a girl shouting, she's a much different voice. There's somebody screaming back there. There's a guy playing the guitar, right? All these different things in the room. If we go back to the room analogy, it's not the same person talking the same way, right? It's all these different things. It's like, yeah, you should easily be able to tell, Jason, even if there's a bunch of kids in the room talking, I should be able to hear your voice because your voice is different, right?
Right.
Yeah, you should. Like, I should be able to just tune out all them little squeaky voices. Be like, "Eek, eek, 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 eek." Okay.
How
I
do you
hear the
do
voice.
that? Teach me.
You don't
We're
pay me
3
enough
deep,
attention.
about ready to be 4,
I
man.
said you should be able to. I didn't say you can. I said you should. Same kind of theory, right? Is number one, you have another thing in the room shouting next to your caller, essentially every second or whatever. I don't know how often they transmit, but it's been so long since I've heard those beeps. I want to say every second, but it's like beep, beep, beep. So I time that, whatever that is. That is shouting every time next to your caller. So, and if you got 5 dogs, they're all going
Right, because they're never lined up.
Yeah, so that alone is a signal. It should not interfere. Okay, just because it should not interfere doesn't mean it doesn't interfere.
Right.
These collars were made, like this design was made in 1970. I don't know, whenever they were building them. It's a very basic signal. It's not on the same scale as the Garmin signal, right? The Garmin signal,
super refined.
Yeah, because they're transmitting data. They're transmitting GPS location, how many barks it's barking, what the battery life. I mean, it's got a lot of data. When you do the boop, when that Garmin sends that little boop, it's not like boop. It's like, here's what I said you need to know.
It's like the guy talking at the end of a medication commercial.
Exactly. Here's all the bad side effects
could also be.
Yeah. So where the telemetry collars are just, all they are is a 1 kilohertz audio sound that you can hear. So the only thing a telemetry collar needs to send out is a sound that we can hear, right? And that's why it's a beep most of the time. Mm-hmm. It's just you could change the tone by changing the frequency of the sound. So it's like a 1 kilohertz is what a little or whatever. It's probably a little higher pitch than that, but
what was it?
So you can change the sound of the beep by the anyways.
Well, that's why you can pick up a 219 141. Like that was one of my dog's collars. I picked it up better at 143, and I tuned the gain way down. Like that, it's like taking an old tractor engine and comparing it to one of these new multi-port injected. Like it's just
kind of
not as refined.
So there's well, we can get geeky here, but on a signal there's 2 signals, right? So when you transmit something, when I'm talking to you right now, okay, there's 2 signals. There's the carrier signal. So let's just use the airplane for example. Like we're gonna travel, something's got to carry my signal to you, right? So okay. The airplane is the carrier signal. That's the VHF. That's the 152 that the Garmin's transmitting on. That's the 217 that the caller that you're dialing. You're dialing the carrier signal. You're saying, frequency. Hey, if I dial into this carrier signal, I can start hearing what I'm supposed to listen to, right? So that's the carrier signal. And then there's a signal embedded into that carrier signal, which generally is sound, right? So that's the 1 kilohertz that we can hear, the tone, the doo or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to dial into the first signal to hear the signal, and then you got to listen to the signal that tells you what you need to tell. Okay, does that make sense?
Tell me what. Yeah.
So that's why Garmin. So there's the carrier signal, which is 156 or 153 for Garmin. It's 217 for telemetry. Okay, 2 different frequencies. They shouldn't interfere. For the most part, they don't interfere. Most of the time, telemetry collars do not interfere with Garmin. The embedded signal on a Garmin is a digital signal, which has a lot of information. It has, again, a GPS location. It has how many barks the dog's doing. It has the battery life. It has all these different things that it's got to listen to, and it's got to get all those information right so it can put it on the handheld. With the telemetry, no such thing. All we got to do is, can you hear the tone? Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Is it louder or quieter?
Yeah, exactly. Is the tone quiet or is the tone loud? It's quieter. Okay, we're not going to tell you what that means, but you figure that out.
But you're going to figure it out after a couple tanks of gas. And some
Where's my
legs.
dog? I don't know. Did you hear a tone? Yeah. Okay, he's there somewhere.
Signal bounce? What are you talking about?
Is it loud or is it quiet? It's loud. Okay. There's no like, it doesn't even tell you if it's close. You got to figure that shit out yourself, right? Oh, make the signal go louder. So that's what happens on those collars. They're a really basic transmission style signal. And so they're not, I'm trying not to offend people. Like,
and we're not saying telemetry is bad.
No, but
we're
it's
not
old
saying
technology.
It's bad to run with your Garmin. We're
it's
just
old technology.
Giving the facts.
These collars are not built in a factory with a really tight tolerance. You know what I mean? So the fact is that they're not built by a tolerance. So if I build a collar at let's say 219.055, that was one of my collars I used to have, right? I still remember how in the hell
Well,
do
I remember
the
whole list of them, man. Like, you don't forget them when you spend that many hours looking for them.
And I haven't used, I don't even know where I wish I could find that collar. I probably sold it or something. But anyways, 219.055. That was my copper dog. She's dead. Like you were saying, I might track that collar on 219.057 or 060.
Right.
Maybe that collar tracks differently in the winter than it does in the summer. Is the collar hot? Is the collar cold? That frequency changes. Did you trim the M of the antenna off when it started poking you in the eyeball? Right. So those the components that make that thing beep are tolerant to heat, conditions, battery life. I mean, just a ton of different environmental things inside that collar that can change it a little bit. So again, it's not saying it should interfere on paper, but what I'm saying is those collars are built in such a different way than Garmin is. Like, Garmin can't be off by that. Garmin's a smart enough collar that when it slides off from 153 to whatever, it has the digital capability to dial that thing back in and tune it a little bit. You know what I mean? So it can, and I don't want to say 100% because I don't know, but the technology that Garmin's using to transmit a VHF signal is so different than the technology that a telemetry company is using to transmit a signal. Okay. One of them is doing it with computer chips, and they can change frequencies on the fly. That's why you can change the ID number of a collar. Right. You can change the channel on the collar.
It's not like a crystal.
Yeah.
Like in the telemetry.
The telemetry days, you can't change it. You get what you get. And like, if you're talking about kid, you don't throw a fit. You know what I mean? You get what you get and you don't throw a fit. It's like, you tell them what you want it to be. They dial it in, and some human somewhere puts it on a piece of equipment and tweaks this little potentiometer, which changes the resistance and changes the RC curve and dials this thing in using the crystal to make it that carrier signal as close to 219.055 as it possibly can. It's a human. Right. And then if you take that collar and you put it in the freezer, you're going to watch that frequency change. Just the way it's going to be. If you put it in the sun, you're going to watch that frequency change. It's just the way it works, right? So, whereas Garmin, and I'm not going to say they do or they don't, I don't know, but they have the capability to go, hey, we're getting warmer up here, and
we need to tweak this so that it stays where it needs to be.
Let's dial our frequency down a little bit, keep it in the band, like keep it in the, we need to be transmitting on this frequency, whatever. So you can't do that with the telemetry. So that's all I'm saying. When I say it's an older system, it's a whole different way of.
You're not saying it's not relevant. It's just, it's different. And now we're adding another piece to it by adding the Garmin, which sets our standards, way up here. Garmin's being held accountable, and maybe I'll make some people mad. They're being held accountable to, in a consumer's eyes, create a product that works flawlessly regardless of anything else around it, even when competing with, 50-year-old technology, older than that. I mean, old technology and unfiltered frequency noise.
the 10,000 foot view is guys all the time. Well, my telemetry collar just beeps. It just works. It just works. I'm like, well, yeah, it's a pretty simple circuit. All it's got to do is beep. That's it.
It's like a light switch versus a computer.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my light's turned on today, but my computer is
switch still works. We got
I mean?
power, we got ground, and we got a light switch that works. Great.
Well,
now run that through your light bar with your digital controls and.
Right. So it's just on the scale of things. If you want, and I don't care. Like I'm not saying, oh my gosh. Well, I'm just saying, if we're going to be fair, if a guy's going to come in and be like, we're going to change the game, and he's going to come in here and he's going to make a telemetry collar or he's going to make a Garmin collar, just realize there's a big difference between making this collar and making that collar and the expectations. And so with that said, it is what it is. Those telemetry collars are very reliable. They do what they're supposed to do. And for a backup system, there is probably nothing better. I have given input to Garmin saying I would like a telemetry system embedded into the Garmin. I doubt they'll ever do it. I just don't think they will. Their first question to me is why do you want that, buddy? And I go, because when the Garmin fails, da, 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 da. And they're like, well, how about we just try to make the Garmin not fail? And I'm like, it's easier said than done.
They're still working on that or what?
Yeah,
Did I miss the memo?
This was years and years and years ago. And I'm like, I can't lie. I can't argue with that logic, right? I'm like,
we're with you. We want you to do that too.
Right. They're like, why do we want? So anyways, I can't argue with that. You know what I mean? That logic of, we want to make our system better so it doesn't fail. I'm like, yeah, I do too. Like, so that's where, you know, and this is nothing fresh. And so anybody getting mad at me, whatever, Garmin or whatever, like this is years and years and years and years ago that I was like, embed this signal in here so that we have a collar and we have a backup telemetry beep that we can chase down. I still would like that. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I would like a
too.
bomb-proof backup whenever things go south. I am a backup type of guy.
Yeah. Backup for the backup.
People want to put these telemetry collars on. I totally get it. I'm not arguing. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying whatever. But I'll give you an example. I had a kid, and I call him a kid. He's not a kid, but I tried to have him on the podcast 30. Sometime. He probably is.
That's how you know we're getting old.
Yeah, his dad, or his grandpa, but the guy who raised him, his name is Herb Kennedy. He's a black guy, lived a couple houses down from me, and I love the guy, man. He's an awesome guy. His son, Jordan. He came in and he put these telemetry collars on his 15Xs or 15s or whatever it was, and brought them into me and was like, they're not, these Garmin's aren't, they're, you know, in his words, they're junk. They don't work.
That's not what he said. I guarantee you that's not what he said.
What did he say?
He didn't say junk. I know. He had to have said some other choice words in there that you're editing out. Because I know Jordan.
Okay. So anyways, he comes in here and he's a good friend. So like, if you're listening to this, and I gotta give him, here's my lawyer statement. I give my script out, man. If you're listening to this, buddy is joking. Okay. He doesn't really, this is not
he loves you,
facetious.
Jordan.
Right. But I go, Jordan, what the hell are you doing? And because I mean we're good friends, so I'm when I'm saying this, please don't take this to be like you have to get rid of telemetry collars, blah 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 blah. I said, but I'm just explaining the situation. I said, Jordan, when's the last time you used telemetry? He goes, oh, I never have. I said, okay, when did your Garmin fail you last? He goes, well, I mean, maybe in the last year. Well, not really. In the last 2 years, not really. 3 years, maybe. I said, okay. So let's just say in 3 years that Garmin fails you and you're going to pull out your backup system.
He
goes, yeah. And I go, are you going to practice with your backup system before? Because like those aren't just like, hey, go to this like LogChamp. This is like
drive here.
I said, here's what's going to happen, Jordan. You're going to pull that shit out. It's going to be in the back seat of your car. If you don't forget it at home after 3 years,
right?
It's going to be in the back seat of your car. The batteries are all going to be corroded because you haven't changed them. So you got corroded batteries in your tracking box. So you're going to have to make sure you clean that out, get the batteries working, try to get the box working. And then you're going to pull it in there and you're going to be like, I don't hear anything. And you're going to try to figure out and learn how to track those collars. I said, so number one, if you're going to run a backup system, you need to learn how to track a telemetry collar.
Be proficient.
So my recommendation is definitely turn your Garmin collars on, but you put that handheld in your glove box and you go hunt and you don't touch that glove box. Okay. And you go do that for a week or 2 weeks. Something goes really bad and you got to open that glove box to get your dogs because it's a safety issue. I'm not going to judge you, right? No hard feelings. But just because it gets hard, you're going to want to go grab that glove box. Right? You're going to, I promise you, you're going to get to a situation where you don't know where your dogs are. You're pointing the wand on the left side of the road and the beep's good. And you're pointing on the right side of the road and the beep's good. And you're pointing at your truck and the beep's good. And you're questioning life. Like,
right. What am I doing?
You're waving this wand around, trying not to poke yourself in the eye. You know what I mean? Like there's situations where you're going to question life. And you're probably not going to get your dog back that night. I mean, you might sleep out in the truck
You're
that night.
You're sleeping like the old days.
If anything, like what I had to do with them. When if you got a wife with you, can have some arguments. You could
have all kinds of stuff. If you're lucky and got kids with you, that'll be fun.
Your buddy's going to be like, no, they're over here. And you're going to be like, no, they're over there. Anyways, all these little things are going to happen. And I said, I promise you're going to want to go grab that thing out of your glove box. You're going to be like, this is stupid. Yeah. This is done. You're going to grab it. Like, don't do it. Finish out with the telemetry collar. Like, if you could learn that lesson, tracking with telemetry is very good.
Yeah.
But pulling it up when you need it is not the answer. Like, you can't just pull that out after 2 years and be an expert at telemetry.
Well, it's like being dropped in the MMA ring as a, dad bod extraordinaire. Like, you know what I mean? You have to train yourself in your tools that you're using. And if you don't know how to use telemetry, it's worse than having it. Like, that's the worst. Not knowing how to do it and not being able to pick up. You know how it was with those boxes. You knew every dial and every tone. Like, I can hear it right now in my head. Just the scratch. And it was an art.
And it was an art. It was dialing this dial and using the attenuator and getting your attenuator and taking your antenna off and pointing all these little tricks and tips you learned to zero down to find a dog in a 300-yard section.
Right.
If the dog's not moving, like, those things were very, very difficult. It was easy to find a dog running down the road. Like, you know what I mean? Like, a dog running down the road looking for you, dude, no problem.
Right.
A dog tied up in a log jam, or, you know what I mean? Like,
figuring elevation on the next mountain,
getting tired and laid up in the bottom. You know what I mean? Like, there was a ton of situations. Anyways, so that was the first thing I told him. I said, if you want to do this, I'm totally supportive of you. Go learn how to use the system. And the only way you're going to do that is to force yourself to go through it, which a lot of people don't want to do. But I'm not going to judge. So the second part, which dials back into interference, is these collars are just not the same level of electronics that the Garmin is. And so they're sending out, I call it a dirty signal. Okay. And it's not to say, the telemetry is bad. It sends out a signal very consistently. It's very reliable. But if you looked at it with what they call a scope,
like a scope,
oscilloscope, which is a device that looks at the signals and looks at the waveforms and looks at how it happens, that's a dirty signal. It's basically like, I don't want to piss people
think
off,
of the analogy all the way through.
A drunk guy. You know what I mean? Like, the only thing I can think of is a drunk guy slurring his speech. Okay. Like, and that's just the best way I can describe it. He's not, if a Garmin is really precise and accurate and accentuates every little thing because it's got to transmit so much material that you got to hear this thing really precise. You got to hear all the data really good.
Sure.
Drunk guy, you just got to hear like, hey, 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 right.
And you can still find him.
And you still find that guy. He's laying in the ditch, whatever. It may take you a little while. But so anyways, But you try and get the specific GPS coordinates and how many dogs like guys go like, so he's over on the 14 south. It's 40 miles. You know what I mean? Like,
have you hunted with my buddy? Like,
this turned out
not
to be a
only
better
that,
podcast than I thought, man.
I swear, man, that's how it was hunting with my buddy. And then when he had to use a track and box, he had to like lift the hood and jimmy some wires together and slam them in there. Those are the best years of my hunting.
So I'm not saying that drunk guy can't tell you where he is and you can't find him, but he's not going to tell you this. He's not going to sound smart doing it. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's going to have, that. So that's the best way I can describe it. When I say a dirty signal, I just mean the signal is not crisp. It's not, it doesn't have the ability to transmit large amounts of data in a short period of time without causing fuzz around that signal.
It's not
And
refined.
so what can happen, again, I'm not saying it always happens. I'm not saying it will happen. Plenty of guys are using telemetry collars next to their Garmin and they're getting just fine. But what can happen is that fuzz and that dirty signal can start to affect the Garmin from sending, receiving, and acquiring the signals that it needs to acquire. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You're basically putting a drunk guy next to your smart guy, and you're expecting the smart guy to work perfectly. Sometimes that works just fine. Okay, no problem. Sometimes the smart guy's like, God damn it, this Jason guy keeps
I was
trying
to say,
to talk.
Let's not make it smart and dumb. Let's make it like his buddy explaining stuff and me. Like, let's not make anybody else mad.
Sometimes somebody's gonna be like, hey, could you tell Jason to shut up? Like, he's over here. Like,
that happens.
Anyways, so that's all I'm saying is the people can put callers in situations unintentional. We're not intending to cause harm on these Garmin collars, but we can't see them, we can't hear them, we can't nothing. We just put them out there. It doesn't mean that those signals are not happening next to that collar.
Right.
And so the last thing is what I have seen the interference the most is not in the ability for the collar to send a signal to the handheld. I don't see the range loss by having a telemetry collar next to it. What I have experienced is the GPS acquiring. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I go back to Jordan, he was like, these collars they always single blink. Right? We were talking about TT15s. He goes, man, these collars are single blink and they're just junk. Right. They don't track. And I said, can we turn those other collars off? Right. Can you take off the telemetry and tell me if the Garmin acquires GPS signal? And he's like, does it? And he's like, yes, they work fine without these other collars on. So those telemetry collars, and I'm not going to say the vendor because I don't want to make people mad. Okay. It wasn't a specific vendor, and it's a telemetry collar versus this one. It's the technology in general. They were causing the Garmin TT15. It'd be the same for the 25. It'd be the same for the Mini. I'm talking general. That collar could not get enough signals to and from the satellite to lock into its pinpoint location. So although that collar could still send out the signal, no problem on the 153 megahertz one, it was having a hard time listening to the fine signal of the clocks coming from the satellites. If you remember what we're talking about there, it was like, I cannot figure out if it said it was 1123.00364 or did it say .0472? This drunk guy has got me messed up next to me. Jason guy. We can't call him drunk guy.
Jason guy. Yeah, you never know.
You know what I mean? So it's this collar's going, I think I said 0.432, but if it was 0.326, that would mean I'd be 100 miles over here, right? So this Garmin's, the smart guy's sitting here doing math and trying to figure out these different things that are coming in. And it's like, man, I just can't get a good read on this satellite. I got two of them. I got two. I know I know my distance from this satellite. I know my distance from this satellite. I cannot understand what these other two satellites are because I keep getting this rush of airwaves. I don't even know what it is because this Garmin doesn't understand what's happening. It just knows I get this distorted signal from this one. I can't get a good clean signal out of here. And so that's what I have seen happen is the telemetry collars can distort the signals coming from the satellites, causing the collar not to acquire satellite signal. So what does that mean for the user? It just means you have to be cognizant of these situations in your environment. And if you're having a problem, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to tell you, turn off all the other collars and tell us if the problem's still there. That's what Garmin's going to do. Like,
right.
Try it without that other collar and see if the device works. And poor hound guy's going to be like, but I want the drone guy next to my new collar. I know that's what we want. But I don't know that's what we're going to get. You know, I mean, I'm just being real. Okay. If I'm just being real, I know we want the telemetry on the collar. We may not be able to use that telemetry on the collar. Just because that 217.167 collar causes interference, 217.478 may not have any problems. Okay?
Right.
And in the cold weather, that 217 collar might slide down to 217.156. And now that's causing interference that it wasn't causing at 166. Okay, so right. it just complicates the system. And so if a guy's going to do that, and I encourage that, because it's the risk of losing a dog is a pretty big deal. Okay, yeah. So I'm not here telling you have to risk it all by a Garmin collar because Garmin won't ever bullshit. Garmin's going to fail. Like
all electronics will fail.
It's going to happen, okay? I'm not here to tell you that Garmin's not going to fail. So I'm not going to tell you don't run telemetry, right? I'm just going to tell you if you decide to go down this road, open your mind up and be willing to play, to test, and to try to dial in your system so that you are not causing interference and problems. Your backup system should not affect your first system. If your backup system,
your first system,
well, yeah,
your backup becomes your priority. Is what I tell people. You know, it can limit your usage.
Put the Garmin on as a backup. You know what I mean? Stop using telemetry.
Right.
So it's just a touchy situation, and I have a feeling, and I have no justification, but it feels like 217 collars cause more issues. Just what I kind of found. I don't have the time to go down and chase this down. I again, it changes with weather. It changes with heat. It changes with temperature. All these things change in the environment. So it would take a very large study of collars at 217.01, 0.02, 0.03. So a telemetry, if I were in the business of selling telemetry collars, this is the study I would take on. Like, honestly, if I were a telemetry, I've thought about buying a telemetry company so that we could try to develop a telemetry style system that has the least impact of the Garmin system, because I think there's a market for that.
Yeah.
I think
for sure.
And I'm not going to say somebody's not out there doing it, right? But I don't think any of these telemetry companies are really looking at the scientific data and seeing how their systems are influencing the Garmin system. You know what I mean? I think they make their box, they make their system work. They don't care what happens to the Garmin system. I mean, I say that roughly, but I you know what I mean? Like,
right, it's not going to change they're not using that to change their product.
Right. And so I think we're in this mode where they're building their product, and then you look over at Garmin and Garmin's building their product, and like Garmin could do the same thing. They could try to order one of every telemetry system and be like, hey, with these old telemetry systems with dirty signals, we need to figure out how to do it. And maybe they do that on some level. I'll give credit where credit's due. I think Garmin would do that before telemetry systems would go the other way. I'm just going to say that. Change my mind.
Change my mind.
I think Garmin will take the rap. People will, they'll probably be mad at me for sticking up for Garmin or whatever. But I would say that I think Garmin would be more curious about how their collars are influenced by telemetry then I think telemetry callers are curious about how their callers are influencing Garmin.
Right.
I just think if there's anybody that's going to look at it, it would be Garmin. And I don't even know if I was on that team, I'd be like, I don't know how you do this. I don't, you know what I mean? Like at some point you just dig your head back in the sand and go, well, we can only make the product we can make. So
right.
Anyways, 217, and it's the only other aspect of this discussion that I talk about is there's I don't know if it's called refractions or reflections or harmonics in radio signals.
Like 217, are you talking about where it hits on the harmonic?
Yeah, so there's a thing called harmonics, okay, on these collars, on these radio waves. Everything has a harmonic, every action. If you drop a pedal, okay, the best way I can visualize this, if you drop a pedal in a very clear lake, okay, or a rock, and you drop a rock in the middle of that, you get that first wave. You know what I mean? Yep. And then you'll see the second wave, and then the third wave, and the fourth wave. And so it makes these different, one rock, one.
Even that's a frequency harmonic.
Exactly. And it's different. So the first one, that wave goes there, it's got a, maybe it's tall. And then the second one's a little bit shorter. And then the third one's a little shorter. And so after so the first one's, you can definitely see the ring. Second one, you can see the ring. Fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. The rings get shorter. It's harder to see the rings in the lake, right? Can you visualize what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Same thing happens in these radio signals. There's a repercussion, and it's hard to explain because in the airwaves you can't see them, but that 217 is the first wave, okay? Right. The second wave, and I don't know what the numbers are, okay? I'm pulling a number out of my ass. But let's just say it's 350. So 217, and then the first harmonic is at 350 megahertz. So it's a shorter signal, okay? But it's still there. It's still a little bit of a signal. So if you were on this one, you can be like, man, I can kind of hear something. And I'm nowhere near 217. I'm on 356, but that's the harmonic of that specific frequency. The third frequency, the fourth the harmonic, the fourth harmonic, the fifth harmonic. What's interesting is around the seventh harmonic of 217 in these collars, that starts to get into 1 point something gigahertz. Okay, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, it gets into those numbers, okay? That's where I think the interference comes from. It's not the 217. It's the seventh harmonic off of the 217 that creates just enough noise that the Garmin starts having a problem with their GPS signal.
Yeah.
And so that's about as much geek as I can take today, Jason.
I know we're going to have to do part 2 to talk about everything else. We're already over an hour.
Yeah. So,
but that was good. I mean, honestly, I feel like that needed dove into because it's getting to be a more common question again. Every fall, it always comes around because guys are starting to use it. But again, like those guys that are using it, there's nothing wrong. Just be aware of what the I don't even want to say consequences. Mm-hmm. I'm getting all PC. It's like we're not intending to make, telemetry look like it's just useless.
I've thought about buying a telemetry collar company, Jason. Like,
yeah,
I've thought about trying to buy a company, running the cost down, and honestly, because I thought, man, the days of needing a 217.166 and 253, I'm like, my logic
frequency.
My logic was 219.100, 219.200, 219.300, 400, 500. I'm like, I said, does it really matter? Do I need to have a bunch of different numbers to distinguish between dogs? Am I going to lose a .100 dog at the same time you lose your .100 dog?
Right.
Maybe. Well, we'll work together and we'll find them both. You know what I mean?
Exactly. You just need like a set, like an emergency alert beacon.
So I've honestly thought, and I go, if I did a telemetry system and you erased everything that you know about telemetry, Okay, here's what they're not doing, right? Here's what these companies are not doing. They're doing the same thing that they've been doing forever. And I don't blame them. That's what they do. That's their company. That's their model. That's what's worked. Okay.
Right.
But for me, I come in and I go, erase everything you know about telemetry. Why do I need a .055? I don't, because I'm not going to remember that shit anymore. But
we're past that.
I want 5 collars, and I want them to be 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 219. I'll remember those. If I'm not tracking that dog on 100, I track it on 200. You know what I mean? So, and then secondly, is there a way to make it smarter that it has little impact into the Garmin? I would just sit back and go, let me brainstorm. What's it doing? How can I find these specific frequencies?
Where's the overlap?
Yeah, the harmonics. You geek out. Again, I don't want to. I you know what I mean? I look at this and go, man, that's too much work for me. Like and then I got to turn into a salesman, and I got to try and sell this on this and that and this, and that's not my cup of tea. Like I'm just here to tell you there's a problem in the room. Y'all figure it out.
But here's what you're looking at.
Yeah. So let's touch base really quick so that we don't leave people hanging on what we said we're going to cover. So really quick, TT25 straps, 0 bands are in stock. Our replacement straps are in stock. The ruggedized flex bands will be next year. So,
oh really?
Last word I got, which was really recently, was March of 2024, and that is a very, very, very loose number. So I'm not like, please don't put that on your calendar. We're taking them off our website because we don't have I don't want to take an order. I mean that is 5-6 months out. That you can't tell me.
Prove it. Show me.
Exactly. I'm like, yep, I'm just a reporter. I'm just telling you.
Don't shoot the messenger.
It's a long ways out for the ruggedized flex bands. The short ones we have in stock, and we still have some ready to ship out. So if you have a beagle collar, if you have a squirrel dog collar, you want that flex band, awesome. It comes with 3 little antenna clip holders, which are awesome. I've been using those. I love those things.
They just snap in. They snap in.
They hold the collar for those smaller ones because the antenna keeper is really tough on a small dog. So that comes with the 0 band flex band. They're $49.99 on our website. Give us a call. We'll get those shipped out right away. If you break a flex band on a regular full size TT25, we have those in stock. Those are ready to ship out also. So that's our flex band point. I'll let you talk about the Outdoor Plus maps working. I haven't messed with that again since. I don't really use that mapping, but
yeah, I haven't had a ton of time to mess with it, but I've been playing around with it a little now that they got everything squared away.
Yeah,
and that is
some issues with accounts and stuff. And
yeah, just getting accounts lined out, and they got it all taken care of. So I kind of got to poke around with it. It's as close to something like all you guys that want Onyx to work again. It's as close as you're going to get. You know, with the property boundaries and the different, I can't even remember the map files, the Rapster maps or whatever.
Raster.
Yeah.
This is a drunk guy talking right there.
Yeah. It's too early. But yeah, the different mapping systems within it, it was kind of crazy the first time you hit your layer button and you're used to like public land and, public land. Bird's eye. Now there's like this whole list. You've got maps for days.
Yeah.
For $50.
$50 a year. And so if a guy doesn't want to do the download and stuff, you can buy the HuntView chips. Absolutely. And then we got on here the 25 store information. I think you're talking about the names and colors and stuff like that.
Yeah, I saw somebody popped up on our Alpha 325 user group. And he was talking about when you transfer those or pair them into another handheld, it populates, which is new with the 25, so you don't have to re-enter.
15Xs did that too.
Or that's right, the X's did too.
Yeah, so that was because the pairing from a 15 was done through the VHF signal. Now that everybody knows what a VHF signal is.
See, I'm learning something right here.
Yeah, the pairing on a TT15X and the TT25 is done through the ANT signal, which is ANT. It's a proprietary.
Oh, sure.
It's another signal that the callers have to do, but it just uses that for like really close communication stuff. So
gotcha.
The nice thing about ANT is you can transfer some information, whereas pairing with a TT15 or TT10, there was very little that you could send information on. Whereas with Ant, we can get things like, hey, what's the dog's name? Hey, what color was the thing? I think colors. I think, but what color is the track?
No, it does. The color of the track transfers over, the name, the update rates, all your settings.
And the other big one is software version. You can go in there and pull the collar software version and see what version of software the collar has. So those are some of the key features that when Garmin switched back to going with Ant that they could communicate with. So a little bit of history.
Handy.
DC30s,
it is handy.
DC30s did by Ant, I believe. And then they went away from that so they could pair a little longer distance, and they're going back to Ant because they got more control. So little different pairing system, little different pairing process. Some people have problems pairing the 15Xs and the TT25s.
Can we hit that real quick? Because that's been happening a lot.
Go ahead.
So I've always done it this way, but apparently not everybody does. When you're holding the power button down, you get the collar to turn on, you hear your double beep. I've always immediately released it. So I never saw a change. But there are a lot of people out there that press and hold that power button until the TT15 or TT10 was actually popped up and paired, like where they could enter the name.
Oh, they held the power button down?
Just kept holding the power button. Yeah, where now if you don't release that power button within a second of that second beep, it will not go into pairing mode.
Or the blue light on the TT25. Right. So I always just look for the blue light on the 25. As soon as you see a blue light, that's pairing mode. You want to let go of the button.
Yeah. Don't keep holding it because it will act like it doesn't even recognize it. It won't pair in, won't do anything.
Cool. And then we got the new antenna keepers. We're working on some prototypes. I'm not even going to cover into that in this podcast. We're not going to talk about those right now. I think I just approved getting the mold made. I like the way the prototype's coming along. We're going to hold these antenna clips. I got a little bit on my Facebook. That'll be a product that we'll have here coming in soon. We're selling some prototypes right now. That product will get a little better. But I don't want to. We've not enough time here today.
Yeah, sure. No, I think that was a pretty good crash course.
Yeah,
we're not trying to start turf wars. Promise.
Yes, and if you're a telemetry company and you think I'm being mean, call me. I'll be more mean. No. Like I said, hopefully we don't make too many people mad. Sometimes I'm just like, I just want to, this is the problem, man. When you're talking to people, everybody has different motivations. And
right.
My motivation is just to be honest with people and tell them what I think. And I could be full of shit. Sometimes I am. Sometimes I am. But this was my wheelhouse, man. This stuff, I used to geek out about it. Now I just want to go out in the woods and hunt. I know enough of the concept. I know enough of this stuff. Like that LED VHF, I can go read those documentations and go, okay, I can see what they're doing here. And they're talking technical jargon, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, ooh, okay, yep, I can see why this is a problem. And my role that I feel that if there's any role that I try to do is to try to break it down into layman's terms. And I apologize right now that I called the telemetry. It's like, classroom, I apologize that I called the telemetry callers the drunks in the room. I just don't have another way of explaining what I'm trying to explain without using that as an analogy.
Yeah, but like you said, it has its place, and it's just, I don't know, man. To me, we carry these collars. We still sell Johnson. We sell Wildlife. We sell Quick Track. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we sell them because it's a good product, or we wouldn't sell it.
Oh, yeah,
that's just what it comes down to. It's just when people are, I'm going to say uneducated, not with ill intent, but like if you're ignorant to what can happen when it does happen, like that's even a worse situation. At least now, if somebody's listened to this and they know what's going on, maybe it'll give them a little peace of mind.
Just stop and think about it. That's all I'm wanting people to do. Like, I'm not saying stop using it. I'm not saying don't buy them. Like, telemetry system is a very reliable situation. Hands down. Like, it's going to outperform Garmin when the question is, does it turn on and does it do what it's supposed to do? Most of the time, the answer is yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what's happening. It don't give a shit if there's a solar flare storm.
Right.
It don't
Servers
care.
down.
Yeah, I don't care if there's a server. It's going to send that beep out, like hands down. You're going to turn that color, you pull that battery out. Does it got battery? Yes. Is it going to beep? Yes. That's it.
From an alligator belly, man. Like,
Right. Exactly.
They click off.
It might not beep on the precise point, but it'd be like you slide around a little bit. He's there. That drunk guy is in the ditch.
Antenna in the water.
He is right there. He's like up. He just may be a different tone. He may be grumbling a little bit differently that morning, but
Right.
It's just different. So if people could just understand that, LED lights on their truck, looking at the interference, looking at 200 guys in this pen or this field trial and go, there's a lot that's happening in the airways right now. Maybe I should use channel scan to try and see if I can figure out what's going on and see where I can switch off to. Those are the things that's all I'm trying to do is get people to think and go, let's figure out what a good solution is, because a lot of times you're not going to change. It's not the Garmin that's got to fix it. It's the environment. Now, again, sometimes Garmin is Garmin. Like there's no, like we try and identify when it's Garmin, we want to get it replaced. It's like, nope. Right. There's times where I'm like, yeah, software's not going to fix that, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's a hardware fail. There's no other way we're going to fix that except for to get it replaced. And that happens. And that happens a lot. I'm not going to,
we do a lot of them.
Sugarcoat it. I want to piss everybody off in the room. If we're going to, I don't want nobody happy with me.
Everybody do a good job.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, let's wrap this one up, Jason. I'm going to get some lunch and then I'll be back in. I got a couple stickers that I got to, we did this so I can come up and make a couple stickers for an order we got to get out today.
Well, by the way, the banner you did for us was fantastic. So I will throw a pitch out there because we've been doing them for the clubs and different organizations. But that sticker machine and the banner printer, if any of you guys are out there looking for club stuff, get
careful, Jason.
Careful. Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind. It's September. Buddy's going to be MIA for the next 4 months.
The problem is I don't have the graphics. So here's what I will tell you. If you need the graphics side of things, that's where it gets difficult because I'm the only guy that's been able to do those for the most part. Now I do have people, Laura's sister's one of them. She's a really good graphic designer.
Yeah, she is.
She's busy. Okay. I can kick work to her, but like I said, so if guys I can call in favors, but what I tell people all the time is like, dude, if you're okay with me spending $50 to $100 on graphics, I can get this done. Like sure. I can kick this off to a graphic designer. They're going to do a kick-ass job. You know what I mean? Like if you need to save that money, you've got to help me on the graphics side. So that's the only preface I'm going to tell you, Jason, is okay. I don't want people beating down my door and then I have to do all the graphics. And that graphics is the most hardest part about that printer right now. We used to have a graphic designer in-house, and like that's just our weak spot is actually doing the graphics. We're doing it for ourselves. I can do some of it, but I do know people get frustrated because we're not able to turn the graphics like we used to when we had a graphic designer just sitting there waiting.
Sure.
So just careful turnout season. I'm like, hey,
sorry, I just made your hunting season busier.
Volunteer. When are you going to learn?
He'll get even with me.
Hey, I think you should take a
state
class.
Lines, man.
I think you should take a class. It would be really good for your magazine.
Yeah, right. Something like that.
So anyway, so if somebody needs something, absolutely we can help you. If you could hand us print ready graphics, dude, no problem. We'd love that. We'd love to help you. If you got a good logo, you got all that stuff done. Most guys don't have print ready graphics. They just got some little screenshot they took off their phone from a website that they're like, right. Can you do some changes here? And I'm like,
just tweak this.
And if a guy's willing to spend $50 to $100, yeah, I got plenty of options to send that to, and I can have somebody handle the graphics part of it, and then we can get you printed stickers, banners, decals, all that kind of stuff, no problem. So anyway, so just the clubs, associations, I just want to preface it because I have dropped the ball on certain clubs that expected more graphics work from me than I was able to do.
Sure.
In the moment, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't know when we'll fix that, but It's just, if you're expecting the graphics side to get handled, we're not a graphics company anymore. I know how to do it. I just don't have the time to do it.
Sure. Well, sorry to sign you up for more work.
No, I'm going to patch them right over to you, Jason.
Send them on over. All right.
All right, let's end this one.